You know that feeling, that moment, when a piece of music just clicks with your soul, or maybe a painting makes you see things differently. That really profound, kind of messy, uniquely human connection we have to art and music. It feels almost fundamental, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Like it's part of who we are.
Yeah.
Across all cultures, all through history.
Right.
And what's really striking, looking at the sources we've been digging into is just how deep this drive is to create, to share, find meaning. It's woven right into the human experience.
It really is.
It's way more than just, entertainment. The sources frame it as foundational to identity, how we connect.
Absolutely. So, okay, we've taken this stack of sources, our notes, basically everything you shared, and we're doing a deep dive looking at this exact topic, but through a really modern lens, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack what these sources are telling us about this relationship. It's complex, it's changing fast, AI and human creativity. We want to understand the fundamental differences in how humans and AI interact with art. What are the impacts? What does it mean for us, for creators, for listeners, for anyone who really cares about human expression?
And the sources, they cover a huge range. It's not just like painting and music in the traditional sense.
No, not at all. It's all kinds of creative expression and how this impulse, this creative thing, it touches pretty much every corner of human life.
So where do we start?
Well, let's jump right into that core idea the sources highlight. At its heart, art and music. They're described as this uniquely human drive for meaning, expression, communication, and maybe most importantly, that shared experience.
And it seems totally universal. The sources really emphasize this isn't just one group. It cuts across gender, age, culture, history.
Exactly. Tapping into these basic human capacities we all share, it's presented as just foundational to our identity, as a species.
Okay.
And what becomes really clear looking across all these different sources is how art and music just show up everywhere, in basically every aspect of human existence.
Like history.
Yeah, take history. The sources point out how art acts as a kind of record, from cave paintings telling us about early values, struggle.
Right, like snapshots.
All the way through classical symphonies capturing the feeling of an era. It's a historical record.
And it's fascinating how that record, which came from human experience, now becomes like incredibly rich data for AI. For analysis, finding patterns.
Precisely. And it's not just external history. It's our internal world, too, our biology.
How so?
Well, the sources say there isn't like one single art gene, but the capacity for symbolic thought, pattern recognition, emotional response, even the fine motor skills to create. It's rooted in our biology, our brain structure. They mention research, showing the brain's reward system lighting up when we have those pleasurable art experiences.
So when AI tries to engage with art, it's almost like it's trying to computationally model what's happening in our physical, biological selves.
Right.
When we create or appreciate it.
Exactly that. It's modeling those underlying processes, which is different from having them.
Right.
And moving from the biological to the more abstract, philosophy is just deeply tied in. Art, music. They've always been ways we grapple with the big questions.
Like, what is beauty? What's truth? What does it mean to be human?
Yeah, exactly. Art is a medium for philosophical inquiry. And AI can analyze how these big themes show up across tons of creative work.
It's not just abstract ideas, though, is it? The source is connected to physics and math, too.
They do. The underlying mathematical structures in music, harmony, rhythm, or principles like perspective and form in visual art, there's a sort of quantifiable side.
Which AI must be great at analyzing.
Oh, absolutely. AI excels there. It can break down those structures, analyze them, and even use those principles to generate new pieces that follow specific rules.
And there's also, like, the logic to it, right? A cognitive process in how we create and interpret art, even when it feels purely emotional.
Definitely. Recognizing patterns using symbols, building coherence within a piece, AI can model those cognitive steps.
Okay, so how does this connect to, like, society, our beliefs?
Well, the sources stress how art and music profoundly influence our state of mind, our belief systems. Think about religious art or national anthems or protest songs.
Yeah, they shaped how we feel, what we think together.
Right. They shape collective identity, consciousness, and the sources suggest AI could potentially analyze the emotional responses art evokes, track its societal impact.
Yeah, what about just us, individuals, how we relate to each other?
Critically important, according to the sources. Art is an outlet for individual expression, obviously, but it also helps us understand other people's experiences. It fosters empathy.
And shared experiences, too.
Exactly. Shared artistic experiences like going to a concert or the theater. They're powerful community builders. They reinforce shared identities, shared values.
And coping mechanisms.
Hugely important. The sources really emphasize art and music as vital coping mechanisms, essential for emotional regulation, building resilience.
Finding comfort when things are tough.
Or amplifying joy when things are good. It works both ways.
So the world reacts to art in all sorts of ways. Catalyst for change, propaganda, just a commodity.
A whole spectrum. And AI can analyze public sentiment around those different reactions, which of course brings up some really fascinating ethical questions the sources get into, specifically around art.
Like what?
Well, issues like censorship, who gets to decide what's okay? Can art be weaponized for misinformation or propaganda? Cultural appropriation, who owns certain forms or symbols?
Right. And its impact on well-being. Could art actually promote harmful ideas?
Exactly. The sources seem to imply that for AI to analyze these things meaningfully, it needs to somehow incorporate or reference human values, societal norms within its models, which is tricky.
Okay, so here's maybe the crux of it.
Yeah.
The sources seem to hammer this point home. The fundamental difference between how we understand art and how AI understands it.
This is absolutely central, yeah. Human understanding is described as, well, an embodied experience.
Embodied, meaning...
Meaning it's sensory. What we see, hear, feel physically, it's deeply emotional, tied to our personal history, our biology, our psychology.
It's subjective.
Totally subjective. Visceral. Based on lived experience. We get nuance, symbolism, emotional depth through this felt sense of being alive, being in the world. We bring intuition, cultural context, shared human history to it.
And the sources even guess at the origins. Maybe it started with basic communication needs, ritual, bonding, storytelling.
Or even just expressing pain, finding relief. It seems tied to the deepest roots of human interaction and consciousness.
Okay, so that's us. Now, contrast that with AI understanding.
Right. AI understanding is fundamentally computational analysis. It's about recognizing patterns in massive data sets, identifying statistical correlations, extracting features like identifying elements in the data.
And it can generate stuff based on those patterns.
Exactly. AI can generate art and music by mimicking the patterns and styles it's learned from all that data.
But this seems like but the sources are super clear. AI fundamentally lacks consciousness. It doesn't feel emotions. It has no lived embodied experience.
That's the core distinction. An AI can analyze, I don't know, millions of songs, identify that a certain chord progression or a specific color palette is statistically linked to human responses labeled sad.
And it can make something similar.
Yeah, it can generate something that fits the sad pattern, but it doesn't feel sadness itself. It understands sad as a data label connected to patterns, not as an internal subjective state that comes from, well, living.
So, okay, let's pull back a bit. Based on the sources, what does all this human art actually mean? How does it impact us, the world? It seems multi-layered.
Definitely multi-layered. It's expression that goes beyond just words. It's vital for preserving culture, transmitting it across generations.
Right, and emotional regulation, catharsis, giving us that outlet.
Builds social cohesion, brings people together. It's a primary way we explore the human condition, those universal joys, sorrows, mysteries.
And it sparks creativity in others.
Undeniably. It stimulates creativity and innovation. The sources even briefly touch on how common nature themes are in art, and they also acknowledge, the practical side, the environmental footprint of actually making physical art.
And connecting to bigger human issues, the sources talk about how struggles, war, poverty, mental health crises, how they affect what they call the creative supply chain.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept.
What kind of impacts do they list?
Significant ones. Reduced artistic output simply because artists might lack resources or safety or freedom.
Makes sense.
A shift in themes often towards protest or expressing hardship. Disruption in how art gets shared, distributed, and even an impact on arts education for the next generation.
But there's a paradox too, right?
There is. The sources note that times of struggle can simultaneously increase the demand for art and music that offers comfort, or maybe just escapism. People need it more sometimes.
Okay, let's talk about some of the really complex human stuff that shows up in art. The sources mention things like drugs, alcohol, sex, greed, lies, truth, life, faith.
Yeah, that whole messy, complex range of human experience. These often serve as direct inspiration or subject matter. Artists draw on personal struggles, moral questions, universal experiences.
So art becomes a way to process these things.
Absolutely. Sometimes it seems intertwined with destructive behaviors, maybe. Other times it's about exploring paths to truth or faith. Art becomes a platform for exploring the moral and ethical sides of these aspects of life.
And the sources mention artists having complex relationships with these things themselves.
Yeah, finding dark inspiration perhaps, but also maybe being consumed. That tension between seeking truth and grappling with lies is a constant theme, and faith, of course, is highlighted as a huge driver for art across so many cultures.
Okay, shifting slightly. Emotions. The sources talk directly about laughing, crying, anger, happiness.
Right. For humans, these are visceral experiences. When you laugh at a comedy, that feeling, that mirth, it's real. It's a felt state.
And we kind of intuitively understand the artist's intention behind it, right?
Yeah.
Their purpose was to make us laugh or think or feel something.
Exactly. We get the why. AI, again, operates differently. It classifies emotional content by analyzing its training data.
So it can predict what might make us laugh.
It can predict that certain patterns are statistically likely to evoke laughter based on past human responses, it's been shown. But it doesn't feel the mirth. It has no intention in the human sense. Its goal is just to optimize for objectives set in its programming, like generating content statistically likely to be labeled joyful.
No feeling, just statistics.
Pretty much.
The sources also link art and music appreciation to human concentration and overall well-being, things fundamental to even basic needs like health and rest.
Right. Being able to concentrate lets us engage more deeply, not just with art, but with life itself.
And this is where AI might have a role.
Potentially, yes. The sources suggest AI could help optimize environments for better focus or rest, maybe by curating personalized artistic recommendations based on analysis of behavior and environment.
Like a personalized focus playlist, but maybe more sophisticated.
Something like that. The sources touch on this idea of AI helping manage resources based on human needs and preferences. They simplify it down to concepts like, your concentration depends on your physiological state and your environment.
Okay.
And maybe engaging with certain kinds of art could improve emotional regulation or cognitive functions. So it's about using AI analysis to potentially help create environments that support human well-being.
Interesting. So when did this understanding of art even begin? The sources draw a really clear contrast between us and AI on this.
Huge contrast. For humans, they place it way back, very early in our history, tied to ritual, communication, maybe even before complex language, social bonding, storytelling.
Pain relief, maybe?
Possibly. It seems deeply rooted in the emergence of human culture, human consciousness itself.
And AI.
AI's understanding is, of course, incredibly recent. It only began with the development of computational methods, data analysis, pattern recognition, machine learning, the tech that lets it process and then generate artistic content. It's purely a product of the digital age.
So given that massive difference, how can AI actually help our understanding? According to these sources, are there positives?
Oh, yeah. The sources list several positive applications. AI can definitely improve personalized recommendation systems, helping you discover art and music tailored to your taste, potentially leading to deeper engagement.
Finding new artists you'd never stumble across otherwise.
Exactly. And it can be a powerful tool for human artists, assisting with composition, design, generating variations on a theme, even just sparking new creative ideas.
Okay, what else?
AI can analyze cross-cultural themes across enormous collections of art and music. It can spot universal patterns, maybe give us insights into the broader human condition that would be hard for one person to see.
That makes sense. Sifting through huge amounts of data.
Right. And it can help preserve digitized art archives, make them accessible globally. That democratizes access to cultural heritage.
And therapeutic uses.
Potential there, too. Identifying or curating art and music that might help with anxiety, cognitive stimulation, mood regulation. And for researchers, analyzing patterns in how art is made and consumed can offer new data points for understanding human psychology, motivation.
Okay, but the sources also touch on a more complex idea. This notion of AI helping someone feel good all the time.
Yeah, that comes up, and it's presented as, well, potentially problematic.
Problematic.
While AI could certainly contribute to well-being, personalized support, optimizing environments, maybe facilitating connections, the sources imply that the idea of constant positive feeling isn't realistic and maybe not even desirable for authentic human growth.
Because real well-being involves the whole spectrum, including struggle.
The sources seem to suggest that, yeah. Experiencing the full range of human emotions, including discomfort or struggle, can be what drives creativity and growth.
And there are other concerns.
Definitely. Limitations, ethical issues. The authenticity of emotion seems to rely on that full human spectrum. If you rely too much on AI to curate your emotional state, you risk algorithmic control, maybe a loss of agency.
And who gets to define good anyways?
Exactly. Who defines what good universally means? It's very complex.
So if we boil it all down, based on these sources, what are the absolute key takeaways? What do we really need to know about AI and art?
Okay, number one, and the sources are really clear on this, AI is a tool. It is not a replacement for human consciousness, emotion, or lived experience when it comes to art.
Got it. Tool, not replacement. What else?
We need to be critically aware of potential biases in AI. The data it learns from reflects human history, human biases, warts and all.
So the output can be biased too?
Potentially, yes. Understanding the ethical implications is also vital. Things like copyright for AI-generated art, the potential for manipulation or propaganda using AI-assisted art.
And how it affects the value of human creativity itself.
Exactly. And maybe the most fundamental thing, recognizing and really valuing that unique spark of human creativity that comes from our messy, embodied, lived experience. That's something AI, as we understand it now, simply cannot replicate.
So who's benefiting right now from all this?
According to the sources, primarily the tech companies building the tools and platforms. Researchers are gaining new insights. Some artists who are adopting AI into their work are benefiting, and consumers through better access and personalization.
And practically, AI can optimize things like the supply chain for art, logistics for events, materials.
Yes, but the sources also flag the flip side, the potential impact on human jobs in creative field or production roles. That's an ongoing question.
This brings up another huge question the sources touch on. Can AI help us understand the big existential stuff? Life, death, purpose?
Well, the sources suggest AI can't truly understand these concepts like a human does because it lacks consciousness, subjective experience.
But it can analyze things.
It can analyze philosophical texts. It can synthesize different perspectives from human thought throughout history. It could even facilitate discussions among humans about these topics.
But it can't give us the meaning of life.
No. The sources frame meaning as something humans construct through living. AI can't provide that.
Yeah.
And it certainly can't confirm philosophical or spiritual ideas like the notion that death is somehow needed for life to have meaning. It just processes information about those ideas.
The sources also make a connection, it sounds like almost a hypothesis, between cruelty and violence and a disregard for things like art and music. That sounds heavy.
It is. AI analysis can identify correlations in data. For instance, that individuals involved in violence often show signs of lacking empathy and a disregard for human life.
And that disregard extends to art.
Often, yes. It seems to extend to those humanizing elements, like art and music, that connect us. So the sources propose this kind of logical deduction. If art and music help foster empathy and connection,
There may be a lack of engagement with them might be linked to reduced empathy.
exactly. It might correlate with reduced empathy development, potentially contributing to a mindset where dehumanization and therefore cruelty becomes more possible.
But they're careful not to say it causes it.
Very careful, no direct causation claimed. But they suggest this disconnection from the things that connect us could be a contributing factor. Still, the ultimate why behind cruelty remains a deeply complex human question, far beyond AI's current grasp, even if it can analyze potential contributing factors found in data.
Okay, what about imagining a human born without any art sense at all? The sources use this thought experiment.
They do, yeah, to really highlight how fundamental art seems to be to the human experience.
What would that person be like?
They're envisioned as significantly diminished, potentially experiencing emotional flatness, maybe facing social isolation because they'd missed shared cultural references and emotional cues in art, possibly even cognitive limits related to pattern recognition or symbolic thinking, and definitely losing access to a huge part of human heritage. It paints a picture of a less complete human experience.
And contrasting that with AI, which is essentially born computationally without that human sense anyway.
Right. It starkly highlights that fundamental difference again, conscious human experience versus computational processing.
Which leads to the different ways people feel about AI and art.
Right.
The sources mention different views.
Yeah, there's the pragmatic view. It is what it is. AI is just another tool. Let's use it.
Then there's the fear.
Right. Concern about dehumanization, AI devaluing that unique human spark.
And the opposite, optimism.
And optimism. Seeing AI as a powerful way to enhance human creativity, expand access, maybe even help us understand ourselves better.
Let's circle back quickly to resilience. The sources mention art helps us cope.
Definitely. Art offers comfort, hope, a way to process trauma. It fosters collective resilience in communities facing hardship.
And AI's role here, maybe personalizing therapeutic content.
That's one potential role the sources suggest. Or helping identify patterns in art linked to positive emotional outcomes. They even use the simplified idea about why people react differently, like why you might laugh at a joke someone else doesn't.
Subjectivity again.
Exactly. Subjective interpretation, individual differences. AI can model these individual response functions computationally. They mention concepts like RG, I, Pi, S. Basically, reaction depends on environment, personal factors, and the stimulus.
Okay, modeling the response.
Right. It can model the correlation between stimulus and likely response for an individual based on data, but it still doesn't feel the subjective emotion itself. It models the pattern, not the experience.
And people come at this whole AI art thing differently depending on their circumstances.
Absolutely. The sources point that out clearly. Your access to technology matters, your education, your cultural background shapes how you perceive art. Socioeconomic status impacts resources and exposure.
Right.
Individual differences in personality, cognitive style, and the basic digital divide, it all plays a role.
What about naive art? That untrained, raw stuff. How do we understand that versus how AI might?
Good question. The sources suggest human intuition gets something special from naive art. We grasp its sincerity. Maybe it's emotional honesty. We connect to that primal creative urge, the authentic life in it. It feels vital, direct.
And AI.
AI's understanding, again, is based on analyzing features, stylistic elements, content themes. It could probably generate something like naive art based on learned patterns, but it lacks that intuitive feeling of connecting with the raw human expression, the sense of life that comes from a conscious, maybe struggling, hoping human being.
So it's like a connection to the human system that produced the data versus a connection to life itself.
That's a good way to put it. That's the distinction the sources seem to make.
And the physicality is totally different too.
Fundamentally different. For humans, it's the physical act of making, the sensory experience of the paint, the sound waves, the neurological activity in our brains, the real spaces where art happens.
Galleries, concert halls.
Right. For AI, the physicality is its hardware, the servers, the energy consumption, the computational infrastructure it needs to run. Very different kind of body.
Which brings us to freedom of expression, a core human belief around art. Could AI undermine that?
The sources raise several concerns here. Algorithmic control AI systems acting as gatekeepers, deciding what art gets seen, potentially limiting diversity or challenging voices. The potential devaluation of human creation if AI output becomes indistinguishable or just floods the market. Commercial pressures, amplified by AI, prioritizing profit over artistic integrity.
All potentially impacting human agency, our ability to create and choose freely.
Exactly. The core human belief in the inherent value of our own creativity and agency is presented as something really important to protect here.
So if this is all so important, why aren't we doing more to teach kids about it, about navigating AI in art?
The sources suggest a few reasons, maybe just a general lack of awareness still. Curriculum development always lags behind fast tech changes, often a heavy focus on STEM fields, sometimes at the expense of arts and digital literacy. And honestly, it's just a really complex topic to teach.
Yeah, it really is. So what should we be doing? What recommendations do the sources make for the future?
They list several specific steps. First, integrate AI literacy into arts education. Don't keep them separate.
Makes sense. Teach kids how the tools work, the implications.
Develop clear ethical guidelines specifically for AI in the creation and use of art. We need some guardrails.
Okay.
Actively promote models of human-AI collaboration. Focus on how AI can augment human creativity, not just replace it.
Like a co-pilot, not the pilot.
Something like that. Emphasize critical thinking skills when engaging with any art, but especially AI-generated or AI-analyzed art. Don't just accept it passively.
And emotional intelligence.
Foster emotional intelligence, EI. Because that's crucial for the authentic human connection with art, which AI lacks.
Support human artists, too.
Definitely. Provide support for human artists, explicitly recognizing the irreplaceable value of their embodied, conscious contributions. And finally,
encourage interdisciplinary research. We need people from AI, cognitive science, neuroscience, the humanities, all working together to really understand this intersection better.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like the main takeaway from these sources is pretty clear. AI is this incredibly powerful computational tool, analyzing patterns, getting better and better at generating stuff that mimics human styles.
And it's the crucial, but it fundamentally lacks that embodied, emotional, conscious understanding that makes art and music so profoundly meaningful, so vital, so uniquely human.
Right. The sources strongly suggest AI's best role here is as a tool, something to enhance our creativity, broaden access, maybe even deepen our understanding of ourselves, but not replace that unique human spark.
Exactly. Safeguarding that essential human element, the consciousness, the emotion, the lived experience that drives it all, that seems paramount. The core ethical challenge, reading through these sources, is making sure AI serves to enrich and add to this amazing, complex human tapestry of art and music,
rather than diminish it or dilute it.
So, thinking about everything we've unpacked, AI's incredible ability to analyze patterns, generate art based on data, contrasted with our messy, embodied, lived experience that fuels human creativity. This deep dive kind of leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? If AI can create something that hits all the right notes aesthetically, looks beautiful, sounds beautiful, does that fundamentally change how we define or value art itself?
Yeah.
Or does it maybe make that very human process, the feeling, the intention, the struggle, the unique life poured into it and drawn from it, does it make that even more precious, even more irreplaceable?
Something to definitely consider as you look at the art and listen to the music around you.
This is DigitView.